I still don't know if what happened to me was real or if my mind just snapped from stress. But to this day, I can't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong with my old neighbor. I moved into a new apartment building about a year ago. It was a quiet place, out of the way, tucked between two older buildings on a narrow street. The kind of place where you don't really see anyone unless you're looking for them. I wasn't thrilled about the area at first, but it was affordable and close to work, so I made peace with it. My neighbor, however, was anything but peaceful. At first, it was little things. A strange noise coming from the attic late at night, like something scraping against the walls. I chalked it up to the building's age, maybe the pipes or the old wood creaking. But it didn't stop. And then, the smell. It was faint at first, but I noticed it creeping into the hallway around the same time every evening. A musty, almost rancid odor that reminded me of something rotting in the walls. I was on the second floor, so I figured it was coming from the apartment above me. But whenever I ran into Mr. Holloway, the man who lived upstairs, he'd always be pleasant. Too pleasant, maybe. He'd smile like he'd just woken up from a long nap, even when it was late at night. His movements were slow, deliberate. His clothes were always the same. Faded old pajamas, slippers, and an oversized robe that always seemed too heavy for the warm weather. He never spoke much about himself. He would nod, smile, and make vague comments about the weather, but something in his eyes always seemed empty. I didn't think much of it until one night when the noises from the attic got unbearably loud. I couldn't sleep. It was like someone was dragging something heavy across the floor above me. But the strange thing was, there was no one else in the building. I knew because I had asked the landlord about it when I first moved in. Mr. Holloway was the only tenant in the entire upper floor. The building was mostly vacant. A few old retirees in the other units, but nothing out of the ordinary. That night, I called the landlord to complain about the noise, but when he picked up, he sounded different. There was an odd hesitation in his voice when I mentioned Mr. Holloway. "Don't go up there," he said, his tone lowering. "Whatever you hear, just ignore it. For your own good, don't go near the attic." I was stunned. I tried to ask him what he meant, but he hung up before I could get another word out. I remember feeling a cold shiver run down my spine as I stared at the phone. What did he mean by that? The next night, I couldn't take it anymore. The noises were even louder now, like something being dragged in slow, agonizing movements. I decided to confront Mr. Holloway. I grabbed my phone and walked up the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. When I reached his door, I hesitated. My knuckles hovered over the doorknob, but something stopped me. A sense of dread, like a thick fog in the air weighing me down. I knocked. No answer. I knocked harder, but still nothing. Just as I was about to leave, I noticed something odd. The door wasn't completely shut. It was cracked open just enough for me to see a sliver of dark space inside. My curiosity got the better of me, and I pushed the door open slowly. It was dark inside, too dark. The curtains were drawn, and the only light came from a single, flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling. But what caught my attention was the smell. That same rotten, musty odor, now stronger than ever. I stepped inside, and that's when I saw it. The attic door was wide open, and there, standing at the top of the stairs leading up into the darkness, was Mr. Holloway. But he wasn't just standing there. His eyes were wide, unblinking, and his mouth was frozen in a silent scream, as if he'd been caught in the middle of something. I couldn't make sense of it. I tried to speak, to ask him if he was okay, but when I looked into his eyes, I felt a coldness that froze my words in my throat. He didn't move, not even a twitch. It was like he was waiting. Then I heard it. A low, rasping noise from above, like something breathing, something heavy and wet. I turned toward the attic, but when I looked back, Mr. Holloway was gone. The door slammed shut, and I was left standing alone in the dark apartment, my breath shallow and rapid. I bolted out of there. I didn't even think to lock the door behind me. I ran down the stairs and back to my apartment, but I could still hear that scraping sound, still smell that disgusting odor. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I decided to confront the landlord again. I told him everything that happened, and he didn't seem surprised. In fact, he looked almost relieved. "You're lucky you didn't go up there," he said softly. "Holloway, he's not really human anymore, not since the accident. He lives in that attic now, and so does whatever's up there with him." I didn't stay in that apartment for long after that. I packed up my things and left as quickly as I could. But even now, I sometimes hear that scraping sound late at night, like something dragging across the floorboards. And every now and then, I'll walk past that building when I'm in the area. The windows are dark, the air still, but I swear I see something, just a flicker of movement, up in the attic. I've always considered myself a rational person. I don't believe in supernatural nonsense or urban legends. But what happened to me a few months ago still keeps me up at night, and I'm not sure how to explain it. This is something that felt too real to dismiss, and it's still haunting me. I'm not saying I saw ghosts or anything like that, but I swear there's something off about my neighbor. It all started when I moved into my new apartment building. It's an older complex, tucked away in a quiet neighborhood just outside the city. Nothing fancy, but it had a certain charm. I was living alone for the first time. Though I was excited about the new chapter in my life, I couldn't shake off a vague sense of unease, but I chalked that up to the stress of moving. My neighbor, who lived in the apartment next door, was a man named Greg. I didn't know much about him, but we exchanged pleasantries whenever we bumped into each other in the hallway. He seemed harmless enough, quiet, always polite, but with a strange intensity in his eyes. He was middle-aged, balding, and wore old, worn-out clothes. Nothing to write home about, but something about him made me uncomfortable in ways I couldn't quite put into words. The first incident happened about 2 weeks after I moved in. It was a late evening, around 10:30 p.m. I was sitting in my living room, watching TV when I heard a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I hesitated before answering. When I opened it, Greg was standing there, holding a small box of what appeared to be homemade cookies. "Hey, I know this is a little random, but I thought you might like these," he said, with a faint smile. I smiled politely, a little taken aback by the sudden gesture. "Oh, that's sweet of you, thanks." He stood there a moment longer than I felt comfortable with. There was a strange pause, like he was waiting for something, but I couldn't quite tell what. "Is everything okay?" I asked, feeling my stomach tighten. He blinked, then nodded quickly. "Oh yeah, everything's fine. Just thought I'd be neighborly." He handed me the box, then turned and walked away before I could say anything else. I closed the door and stood there for a few moments, staring at the box in my hands. There was something about the whole interaction that unsettled me. I didn't know what it was, but I just couldn't shake the feeling that Greg wasn't as harmless as he appeared. Over the next few weeks, things only got worse. I started noticing strange things, Little things at first. Noises in the walls at night, like something scraping against the drywall. At first, I thought it was just the building settling, but it got louder, more persistent. I'd hear it when I was trying to sleep, just before I drift off, like something was moving behind the walls, pacing back and forth. One evening, I decided to take a walk around the block to clear my head. When I came back, I noticed something strange. Greg's door was slightly ajar. It wasn't wide open, but just enough that I could see a sliver of the inside of his apartment. And that's when I saw it. There was a long string of what looked like pictures, stuck to the walls, arranged in a pattern, some of them overlapping. They looked like old photographs, some faded and torn, others completely new. But what made my blood run cold was that some of the photos had me in them, taken from different angles, different times of the day. I could barely make out the details, but there was no mistaking it. It was me. Before I could process what I was seeing, the door suddenly slammed shut, and I heard Greg's voice from inside. "You shouldn't be out there. It's dangerous to go snooping around," he called, his tone too calm, too even. I froze. My heart was pounding in my chest. I had no idea what to do. Should I knock? Should I leave? I didn't want to confront him, but I also felt like something was terribly wrong. Instead, I turned and walked away, my mind racing with questions. Over the next few days, the strange occurrences escalated. I began finding things outside my door, small trinkets, old keys, and once, a torn page from a notebook with a list of my favorite things. Things no one should have known. Things I hadn't shared with anyone. I decided to confront Greg. I couldn't keep pretending like nothing was wrong. One evening, I knocked on his door. He opened it almost immediately, like he'd been waiting for me. "Greg, I need to talk to you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's going on? I saw the pictures in your apartment. Why are you following me?" His expression didn't change, but his eyes, they looked different now, cold. "I told you. It's better if you don't know," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "But if you really want to understand, you'll need to stay away. I'm trying to help you, but you won't listen." Before I could ask anything else, he slammed the door in my face. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept hearing those noises in the walls again, only this time they were louder, more frantic. I felt like something was trying to break through, and then I heard breathing. Low, raspy breaths coming from the other side of the wall. I swear I could hear Greg's voice again, murmuring something incomprehensible. I haven't been back to the apartment since. I packed up my things and stayed with a friend. But even now, I can't shake the feeling that Greg is still watching me. Sometimes, when I look out of my window, I swear I see his figure standing in his apartment, staring out at me from the darkness. I'm not sure if he's still there or if he's gone, but I don't want to find out. I've tried to report him to the building management, but they say they've never had any complaints about him. The worst part, a few days ago, I found a new item outside my door, a photograph. It was of me, standing by the window in my current apartment, looking out. The timestamp on the back read, "Yesterday." I don't know if he's still out there, but I can't shake the feeling that he knows everything about me now. And I'm scared it's only a matter of time before he comes knocking again.